You do not begin by looking up. You begin by closing your eyes. The stars, after all, were never only in the sky, they were also in the mind, in the breath, in the silence that came before thought. The darkness does not frighten you yet. It holds you. It slows your heartbeat. It invites you into something older than time. You are not trying to understand the sky. You are trying to remember how it once felt to not need to. Before the telescope, before charts and data and names carved in Latin, there was simply this: a face tilted toward the night, a question held softly in the chest. What are you? Why do you move? Why do I feel less alone when you shine? The astronomer of the past was not a man in a lab coat. He was a monk, a shepherd, a sailor, a woman who rose before the others and noticed when a star blinked out earlier than before. He was not separate from the world. He was listening to it. And this listening, this sacred noticing, was not just science. It was culture. It was meaning. Peter Burke reminds us that knowledge is always shaped by the hands that hold it. The stars were not just physical bodies. They were symbols. They were calendars, yes, but also confessions. They were stories passed in whispers, signs from God's proof of fate, patterns to be, trusted when the earth gave no answers. To look at the sky was to step outside, the smallness of your own breath, but also somehow to step into it, to feel how brief and soft and necessary your own body was, under the same stars that watched over. Emperors and beggars alike, the stars did not change, but they changed the people who watched them. You now, with your screen and your schedule and your fractured time, you are not so different. You still ache for that same silence. You still feel it, don't you? The pull of the night, the relief in not knowing, the strange comfort of being surrounded by something so vast and so quiet that it lets you rest. This is not about astronomy, not really. This is about attention, about the kind of attention that requires stillness, the kind that reveals not answers, but presence. The stars don't speak, they don't rush, they simply are. And in being, they teach you how to be too. So tonight, this isn't a lesson, it's a returning, a slow unfolding, a quiet walk into the dark, not to find light, but to feel what it means to be small again. Not powerless, just small, just human, just part of something immeasurable and kind. Let the sky show you how. Let it tell you its story. Let it remind you of yours. Not with noise, not with urgency, but with the slow rhythm of stars that never hurry and never leave. You do not own a clock. There is no ticking. In your home, no screen glowing with digits. There is only the sky, wide, constant, whispering things you do not fully understand, but trust anyway. Time does not live in numbers here. It lives in light, in patterns, in the repetition of stars that rise and fall like breath. You wake not because it is 6 a.m., but because Orion has tilted just slightly further west. You plant because the moon has changed. You rest because a certain cluster disappears behind the hills. You do not ask what day it is. You ask where the stars are. The constellations are not entertainment. They are warnings, invitations, agreements made with the heavens, the curve of the bear, the line of the hunter, the triangle, that glows sharp in early spring, they do. Not simply decorate the sky, they mark when it is safe to sow, when it is wise to wait, when the weather may turn. You learn this from stories, from grandmothers, from failures etched in memory. One wrong planting and the crop fails. One forgotten star and a storm arrives. Too early, and so you watch. The moon becomes a kind of silent teacher. When it swells, you gather. When it hides, you stay still. People cut hair by the moon. Time births by it. Courts once judged. By it, you do not separate body from sky. The pulse in your wrist echoes the rhythms. Above you, to ignore the stars would be to ignore yourself. Every culture reads the sky in its own tongue. What one calls a scorpion, another sees as a boat. What one fears, another follows. But the instinct is the same, to find meaning in the movement above, to find comfort in repetition, to tether the chaos of life to something that seems, at least from here, eternal. And yet, what do we have now? A fragmented clock, a calendar that buzzes, hours cut into quarters, days stacked like tasks. We check the time more often than we feel it. We set alarms, then snooze them. We divide the day into slots. But are we in it? Are we within the day? Or are we rushing through it, hoping for rest? Back then, rest came because the stars said. So, because the light faded? Because the birds stopped? Because the moon tilted just? So, and you knew, it is time to stop. Not because of exhaustion, not because of burnout, but because the world has shifted, and your place within it must shift too. Time was not chased. It was followed like a path in the woods, like a ripple on water. You did not conquer the day. You belonged to it. And perhaps even now, somewhere inside you, that instinct remains, that quiet knowledge, that slow, steady knowing when to begin, when to breathe, when to wait, when to sleep. You don't need to name the stars to remember how to follow them. You just need to pause long enough to look up and let them carry you slowly back into time that lives in the sky not. In your pocket. You wait, not because there is nothing to do, but because the sky demands it. Darkness has not arrived fully. It leaks in slowly touching corners, first edges of walls, outlines of trees, the folds of fabric on your lap. You sit still. You do not light a fire. You do not speak. The dark must come without interference. It must settle into the air like breath returning to its body. Before the age of electricity, darkness was not an obstacle. It was a season, a landscape, a condition of being. You did not fight it. You moved with it. You learned its pace. The astronomer of the past knew that light was rare, but silence was rarer. To find the stars, you had to leave the village, climb, wait, and most of all, you had to let your eyes learn, again, what they were made for. It takes time for the eyes to adjust, time you do not rush. The cones rest, the rods awaken, color fades, shadows sharpen. You stop seeing things and start sensing them. The sky no longer hangs above you, it surrounds you. You become part of it. Noise is the enemy of observation. Not just the clatter of voices or carts, but the noise inside, the rush of thoughts, the hurry of wanting to know. The astronomer had to learn patience not as a virtue, but as a tool. To see, you must first become Quiet, truly quiet, as if the air inside your chest must still before the stars will answer you. The night teaches that light is not always helpful, that some truths arrive only in shadow, in the spaces between things, in the gaps where the eye cannot quite distinguish, but the heart understands. Something has appeared, something ancient, something waiting. You lie back on cold stone or stand on a hillside, cloak pulled tight around your shoulders. You hold your gaze steady. The instrument in your hands, if you have one, is simple, a quadrant, an astrolabe, a sliver of metal and memory. You are not here for proof. You are here for presence. And while the world below sleeps, you are still. Awake not from anxiety, but from attention. Wakefulness becomes your devotion, not to ambition, not to production, but to all. There are no screens, no indicators, no alerts, just breath, just sky, just time, unfolding slowly above you without needing to explain itself. Others fear the dark. You do not, it better than daylight. In the dark, your thoughts soften, your senses sharpen. You become a creature of listening, of attunement. The night has its own rhythm, not of urgency, but of invitation. It does not call loudly, it waits to be noticed. And when you respond, when you enter that, silence willingly, you do not just find stars. You find a mirror. You find the part of you that no longer needs to achieve, to impress, to answer. You find the part that only watches, only breathes, only waits. The astronomer of old did not fear this. Silence, he welcomed it. He trained for it. He understood that sometimes the most accurate measurements are not made with numbers, but with stillness. And in that stillness, under that wide, soundless sky, something shifts. The world gets bigger, the self gets softer, and what once felt distant begins to feel near. Not because the stars have moved, but because you have returned to something true, something steady, something that does not flicker when the power goes out. You have returned to darkness, and in that darkness, the stars begin to sing. The stars do not change quickly. Their movement is slow, careful, almost ritualistic. And so to follow them, to trace their patterns, you must also move. Slowly, you must draw, not because you are an artist, but because the act of drawing is the act of remembering, of honoring, of becoming part of the sky you observe. You sit at a desk of rough wood. The air is still. A candle flickers beside your page. The parchment is coarse beneath your hand. The ink smells of ash and iron. Your fingers, smudged and cramped, move with practiced care. You are not sketching ideas. You are recording alignments. You are giving form to something infinite. The stars are not just dots. They are stories. They are warnings. They are rhythm, and you must place them with reverence. One wrong mark, and a traveler may become lost. A farmer may plant two. Soon, a monk may miscalculate a holy day. Your mistake could echo in seasons, in harvests, in prayers. You copy what you see, but also what you were told, what you heard whispered across generations. Your drawing becomes a tapestry of observation and faith. You do not separate what is seen from what is believed. The lines curve with purpose. The Symbols are not. Random, they are sacred. You know the names of the stars not. Just in Latin, but in the language of your grandmother, in the tongue of the shepherd. The sky is multilingual, multicultural. And your manuscript must speak in the voices of many. Each map is unique, not because the stars are different, but because the hand that draws them is, you include small, flourishes not to decorate, but to respect. A red circle here, a golden line there, not for beauty, but for devotion. Because copying the sky is not just recording, it is offering. Mistakes happen. A line too short, a symbol misread. But the page does not judge. It receives what you can give, and sometimes these errors become truths. Repeated, canonized, trusted, not because they are accurate, but because they endured. There is a kind of grace in that, a gentleness, the knowledge that truth too is shaped by the hands that hold it. That, what we pass down, is never perfect, but always meaningful. You work slowly, there is no rush, no deadline, only the rhythm of your breath, and the stars above, steady and patient. And in that rhythm, the manuscript becomes more than a map. It becomes a memory, a piece of sky held in ink, a testament to a time when knowing required slowness, silence, and the humility to copy what you could never truly own. Today we scroll, we tap, we zoom in and out. The sky becomes an image rendered. Instantly, a simulation, a tool. But what is lost in that speed? What happens when we forget how it felt to draw? A star by hand? To wait for clear skies? To trust that what you write, someone else will read by candlelight, perhaps years from now? To draw the sky is to sit inside its rhythm, to let your body echo the orbit of planets, the drift of light, the pull of night. And when you close the manuscript, smudged and imperfect, you do not feel failure. You feel presence. You feel connected. You feel for a moment like you too have moved with the stars, not above them, not beyond them, but alongside them. And that perhaps is the most honest astronomy there is. You feel the season before you name it. You smell it in the bark. You see it in the angle of light across the field. But mostly you look up, and what you see there tells you what your hands must do next. The sky is not decoration. It is instruction. It does not predict the future. It shapes the present. Before the farmer tills, before the seed is chosen, before the soil is touched, the sky is red. A star appears earlier than expected. A familiar constellation fades. Too soon, the moon lingers. The wind shifts, not on Earth, but above it. These signs do not confuse you. They guide you. They do not ask to be analyzed. They ask to be followed. You are not an astronomer by profession, but you know the sky because you need it. Your family needs it. The land needs it. You may not write your observations down, but they live in your body in the way you walk the boundary of a field, in the way you press the seeds into the earth on a night of waning moonlight, in the way you trust that what is above will tell you what is below. The stars do not speak in theories. They speak in frost dates, in rain cycles, in early flowers and late birds. Every glance toward the sky is a decision, not academic. Immediate survival. depends on your reading. A shepherd knows when to lead the flock. Higher, a fisherman knows when to wait. When to move, a midwife feels the shift in. Energy when the moon is full. These are not superstitions. They are integrations, mappings of sky to body, of light to life. There was a time when no separation existed between agriculture and astronomy. The farmer was the scientist. The priest was the observer. The villager, the recorder. Together they made sense of the heavens by staying close to the dirt. The calendar was not kept in books. It was held in calloused hands, in weathered faces, in repetition, in trust. And each culture, each village, each valley developed its own cosmology, its own relationship between sky and soil. What one culture planted under, another harvested. What one feared in the stars, another welcomed. Yet all of them looked up before they knelt down. This wisdom, slow and collective, built civilizations. It fed them, stabilized them, made them humble. But slowly that thread loosened. Machines came. Algorithms came. Time became something counted, not felt. Planting was scheduled by software, not stars. And so we began to forget what it meant to plant with the moon, to wait for a constellation before moving the herd. 2. Rest not because it was the weekend, but because a certain star had disappeared. We began to look down at data, at charts, at screens. The sky, once our teacher, became invisible again, not from clouds, but from distraction. But the old rhythms remain, not in textbooks, but in memory, in ritual, in the quiet insistence of the land that still responds best when the stars are listened to. And so if you find yourself longing for something steady, something older than stress, something deeper than productivity, look up. Not for answers, but for rhythm, for alignment, for the feeling of being part of a cycle, not outside it. Because when the sky told the farmer when to sow, it was not commanding. It was conversing. It was offering. And all the farmer had to do was notice, just as you can now. Not with urgency, but with reverence and with the quiet joy of remembering that once the sky and the soil spoke the same language, and you were fluent in both. The sky is not studied from a desk. It is studied from the spine, the neck, the knees. The astronomer's body is not passive. It is shaped by looking up, by leaning back, by crouching low on a cold rooftop, arms cradling wood and brass, and silence. Before numbers, before formulas, there is posture. There is presence. You kneel not in worship, but in alignment. Your body adjusts not just to the stars, but to the instruments built to find them. A quadrant rests against your cheek. A sighting tube hugs your eye. An astrolabe dangles from your hand like a sacred weight. These are not tools in the modern sense. They are extensions of your breath, of your slowness, of your willingness to wait. The cold metal does not comfort you. It challenges you. It insists on precision, not the kind you type into a calculator, but the kind that lives in the muscle memory of the hands. You have learned this shape, this tension, this release. Your thumb finds the same groove each night. Your eye adjusts to the same blur. You learn to still yourself long enough that the stars begin to trust you. You are not detached. You are part of the device, part of the equation, part of the quiet. The work is physical. You balance on stones. You climb to higher ground. You carry weight not just in your instruments, but in your responsibility. If your reading is off, if your body misaligns the device, by a single breath, your chart will fail. And yet you keep going, you keep returning, because this is not just observation. It is practice. The astronomer's training is not only intellectual, it is embodied. It lives in the back, the shoulders, the fingertips. You do not chase efficiency. You seek fidelity, faithfulness to the sky's pace. You do not rush a measurement. You wait. You wait until the haze clears, until the axis settles, until your body becomes quiet, enough to hear the stillness of the stars. And you are not alone. Others came before. Others knelt here. Others waited. The same tools held in different hands. The same stars seen through different eyes. The continuity is not just in the sky, it is in the shape of the back that bends toward it. In time, these instruments will disappear, replaced by telescopes too heavy for the hand, by satellites too distant to touch, by data too fast to feel. But in this moment, in this still, dark place, the relationship is personal, intimate, a collaboration between your bones and the infinite. You measure not to prove, but to understand. Not to predict, but to participate. The stars do not need you to record them, but they allow it. They allow your body to mirror theirs for a moment, across distance, across silence. And so the astronomer learns patience not by reading about it, but by becoming it. Each posture, each repetition, each breath, held long enough to catch a glimmer through. The fog, this is the work, and this is the gift. Your body remembers what your mind forgets. It remembers how to wait, how to bow, how to rise again, not with answers, but with closeness. Not every gesture is scientific. Some are sacred. Some are simply the shape you make. When trying to hold something, that can never be held. And the astronomer's body, quiet and disciplined, remains a vessel for the sky. A listener, a seeker, a shape carved by stars. There are no observatories yet, no fixed domes or climate-controlled towers. The astronomer must move, not for ambition, for clarity, for survival. The sky does not belong to a single place. It shifts, it demands pursuit. And so the astronomer walks across dunes, across mountains, through forests and alleys and corridors of stone. He walks because the stars are waiting. In the desert, the night is cleaner. It arrives like a prayer, sudden and vast. The wind softens. The heat slips away. The stars sharpen into a language you did not know you spoke. Here, beneath the dry breath of the earth, the astronomer becomes small in a way that does not shame him. He is not central. He is witness. The Bedouin. Guides share their knowledge not with diagrams, but with gestures. A hand lifts, a shoulder tilts. That star, that one means it's time to turn east. In monasteries, the sky becomes a scripture. It is read by candlelight. Between chants and silences, monks step quietly through corridors, clutching parchment and sky at once. Their astronomy is a kind of devotion, measured, rhythmic, built on patience, built on repetition. The bells ring not just for prayer, but for the tracking of a celestial event. Heaven is not far. It is plotted nightly on tablets with ink and humility. And in the courts Chinese, Persian, Mughal, Byzantine, the astronomer becomes an advisor, draped in robes, eyes lifted, speaking in numbers that mean more than numbers. The emperor asks, and the astronomer answers not with certainty, but with rhythm. This eclipse will come. This alignment favors war. This moment is auspicious. His words shaped the timing of marriages, of journeys, of judgment. He does not rule, but his gaze affects the throne. In all these places, the astronomer is both outsider and insider. Trusted, but watched. Valued, but vulnerable. He must navigate not only the stars, but the powers. Beneath them, he must carry his knowledge. Gently, aware that it could be mistaken for magic, or threat, or prophecy. And yet he travels, because knowledge must move, because the stars are not the same. From every angle, because each elevation, each latitude, each air has a different echo of the same light. He moves to find clarity. He moves to stay alive. Sometimes he travels alone, sometimes with guards, sometimes with scrolls tied tightly. To his chest, ink still drying. The journey is long. Dust clings to every surface. But the sky above remains unbothered, unchanging in its patience. At night, he unrolls his charts beside, fires, points upward, teaches a curious child, argues softly with a local scholar. There is no border in the sky. No king has drawn lines between constellations. The stars belong to all. And so, does the knowing of them. This mobility shapes the astronomer. He is not just a scholar. He is a bridge, a thread between cultures, a whisper across empires. He carries not only measurements, but metaphors, not only facts, but gestures. He learns how to say moon in 7 languages. He learns how to bow in all of them. The knowledge he holds grows not in isolation, but in movement, in friction, in exchange. The stars do not care for your city or your creed, but they shine more clearly in places where human noise is dimmed, and the astronomer must go there again and again. He does not seek fame, he seeks sight, and in doing so, he carries more than data. He carries the memory of 1,000 skies, the wisdom of quiet conversations, the grace of being the one who walks toward light, not with haste, but with reverence. And wherever he arrives, from desert, tend to marble court, the stars follow, or rather they wait, because they were always there. And he, just like you, is learning how to see them again and again and again. There's no map in your hand, no glowing screen, no voice telling you when to turn. Left. The path ahead is dark, the world around you is quiet, and yet you are not lost. Above you, a single star holds, steady, not the brightest, not the most beautiful, but the most faithful Polaris, the North Star, the one that stays. You've heard stories of it since you were a child, not in textbooks, but in songs. In quiet instructions whispered before a journey, follow the one that doesn't move. Trust the one that watches. The others may wander. This one will wait. For the pilgrim, the star is promise. You walk not because the road is safe, but because it is necessary. The journey is long, Your feet blister. Your bones ache. The ground is uneven, but the sky is not. Every night it returns. That same pattern. That same reassurance. You may forget your prayers. You may lose your way, but the stars do not. They are not silent ornaments. They are companions. You learn to read their tilt. Like a compass, the dipper turns season by season, but the point remains. You don't need degrees, you need direction. You follow the lean of the sky, and slowly, with trust worn into your step, you arrive. On the sea, the stakes are higher. There are no roads, no trees, only water, only wind, only horizon. The sailor learns. The sky as one learns a body intimately, patiently, with awe and with error. You measure angles with a cross staff or by eye. You guess at time by the moon's shadow. You watch the rise of Orion's shoulder and know the night's pulse. The stars become your map, your safety, your boundary. They tell you not just where to go, but who you are in the vastness of water where nothing is still. The stars are the only anchor, and still they are not yours. They do not belong to any nation. They do not heed any crown. This celestial navigation is not taught in schools. It is passed down on ships, in silence, around fires, through repetition and mistaken memory. A father shows a son how to hold the line of the horizon against the arc of a star. A captain teaches an apprentice to listen with his eyes. The wisdom is fragile. It lives in people, not programs. Today you travel by algorithm. A voice tells you how far, how fast, where to stop. You do not look up. You do not even know which way is north. You arrive, but you have not traveled. You have moved, but not oriented. You have reached your destination, but lost your direction. The night sky is still there, waiting, but you do not ask it questions anymore. You've forgotten how to listen. But the stars have not changed. They still offer guidance. Not just geographic, but spiritual. To know where you are, you must sometimes stop. Be still. Be silent. Be willing to receive. The stars do not shout. They do not blink urgently. They are patient. They are exact. They are old. The pilgrim and the navigator understood this, not because they were romantics, but because they needed to survive. They read the sky the way you read a face, for signs, for familiarity, for truth. To follow the stars is to trust something larger than your own control. It is too. Surrender not to chaos, but to continuity, to pattern, to presence. And even now, though your roads are paved and your devices are charged, you carry that ancient hunger, that desire to be guided, not perfectly, just enough. Enough to know which way is forward, just enough to feel that the world, vast and silent, is still speaking. And if you dare to look up, truly look, you may find that the stars still know your name, not the one you type, the one you walk, the one you follow, the one that leads you home. The line is not clear, not them, not for them. The astronomer who gazes at the stars, with careful calculation, is the same who traces meaning through them. There is no conflict. There is no need to choose between science and symbol. To observe is to interpret. To measure is to wonder. The sky is not just a system, it is a message. For centuries, there was no distinction. The one who charted the eclipse also read its implications, not because he lacked rigor, but because he understood rhythm. The stars were both data and direction. They were precise, but not cold. They were moving, but not meaningless. A king asks when to marry. A general waits. To march, a farmer plants after a certain alignment. The knowledge is not casual. It is studied, shared, trusted. The astrologer is not mocked. He is consulted. His charts are examined like maps. His words shape decisions. The zodiac is not entertainment. It is orientation, a way of understanding time. Personality, tendency, not with absolute certainty, but with reflection. The sky becomes a mirror, vast and slow and strangely familiar. The planets are not just orbiting rocks. They are presences, not gods perhaps, but more than objects. Their dance across the night sky is watched not only with lenses, but with emotion, with intuition, with reverence, and yet slowly a division emerges. Not because the stars have changed, but because the way we see them has. The enlightenment arrives. Precision becomes proof. Feeling becomes suspect. The sacred gives way to the sterile. The astrologer becomes a relic even as the astronomer borrows his tools. We say now that astrology is myth, superstition, and yet people still ask, still wonder, still glance at the sky on a difficult day and whisper, "Is this why I feel this way?" Because even if we reject the symbols, we remember them. We crave what they offered. Not control, but context. Not prediction, but presence. A way to name the invisible. Tides that move within us. Our way to feel seen not by science, but by story. The ancient sky was full of meaning, not provable, but livable. A pattern that held not only matter, but message. To strip that away too, insist that the sky is only a machine is to forget how long. It has spoken to us in symbols. Maybe you don't believe in horoscopes. That's fine. Belief is not the point. What matters is the connection. The shared act of looking up and wondering what it might mean. Because even now, even in our most rational hours, we are still creatures of story. We still navigate by meaning, as much as by math. To remember that the same hands that measured the heavens also reached for their guidance is not to blur truth. It is to honor a different kind of knowing, one that is not less, just quieter, older, woven into the way we breathe when the stars appear. And perhaps what we've lost is not accuracy. Perhaps it's humility. The willingness to admit that some truths come with metaphors, that science and spirit once sat beside each other, that certainty was never the only form of wisdom. So look at the sky, measure it if you wish, but also feel it. Let it be more than light and gravity. Let it remind you that for most of human history, the stars did not just explain the world, they comforted it. They named its longings. They gave shape to its silence. And maybe even now, even here, they still do. You sit beneath the night sky, and for once, you do not ask it anything. You do. Not hope for answers or predictions or signs. You simply look. And looking, you begin to feel what the old astronomers must have felt. Not curiosity alone, but a kind of surrender, a stillness that lives not in the silence of the stars, but in the space they open within you. This is not a method taught in universities. It is not marked by steps or formulas or diagrams. It is marked by the absence of urgency, by the willingness to not understand and still remain. The ancient astronomer does not seek to conquer the heavens. He seeks to dwell within them, to dwell in the question. You notice it in the slowness of their records, the gaps between observations. The pauses not filled with commentary, but with breath. You notice it in the patience of their charts, in the margins left blank for what might appear later. They knew the value of the unknown. They respected it. To contemplate is not to be passive. It is to be deeply engaged, but without grasping. Without chasing. You do not pierce. The sky you open to it. You listen without expectation. You allow wonder to rise, not as a spark, but as a tide. Many astronomers in the past were monks, mystics, poets, not because they lacked precision, but because they knew how to wait, how to hold a question without rushing it toward resolution. They looked at the stars not only to see what moved, but to feel what stayed still. Contemplation is not a search for answers. It is a practice of attention. It is a discipline of presence you return to. The same sky, night after night, not to get more from it, but to become quieter within it. Some described it as harmony, others as order. Others said nothing at all. They simply watched, and in the watching, something softened. The edges of thought, the tension of identity, the ache of trying to always be certain. This kind of knowing does not translate easily into words. It resists. Documentation. It lives in the body, in the gaze, in the nights when you are too tired to think and too awake to sleep. And in that middle place, something becomes clear, not as fact, but as feeling. That the stars do not demand interpretation. They invite presence. They reward patience. They give themselves only to those willing to wait without asking why. This is why, even today, you might find yourself staring at the sky not for navigation or knowledge, but for rest, for restoration, for a moment of alignment, not with information, but with rhythm, with the slow turning of something vast and kind. In that way, the sky becomes a teacher, not loud, not didactic, just consistent, just there. A mirror so wide it reflects more. Than your face, it reflects your need to be part of something you cannot control. This is contemplation, not escape, not emptiness, but a deep return to silence, to humility, to wonder. And perhaps in a world that rewards quick conclusions and fast results, this ancient way of learning might be the most necessary skill of all. Not to know, but to look. Not to answer, but to remain. So the astronomer stays, looking, listening, remembering that the stars are not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be joined. And in that quiet joining, something in him aligns, something in you too, quietly, invisibly, like light crossing, centuries to find your eyes. You step outside at night and look up, and for a moment you wonder if the stars have left. The sky above you is dim, pale, flat. There is a haze where darkness used to be. A blankness where stories once lived. The constellations are gone, not because they moved, but because we covered them, not with clouds, but with light. The city glows endlessly. Windows, street lamps, screens in every hand. A brightness that never sleeps and never lets anything else sleep either. This light was meant to keep us safe, to extend our hours, to remind us that we are in control. But something was taken with its arrival, something old, something quiet, something we barely noticed until it was gone. The stars were not merely distant suns. They were reference points, not just for sailors and monks, but for ordinary people who needed rhythm, who needed to feel small in a way that soothed them, who needed to mark time not in schedules, but in appearances, in the slow return of a familiar star to its corner of the sky. When light came, you didn't just illuminate, it erased. It drowned the subtle. It made us forget what it meant to wait for. Darkness, to prepare for it, to belong to it. Now, night is never truly night. It is delay. It is interruption. It is the hum of electricity hiding silence. And so the sky became theoretical. It became something we studied through machines, but no longer met with our own eyes. Astronomy grew more precise, but less personal, more advanced, but less embodied. The stars became coordinates, objects, not presences, not companions. The observatories moved to mountaintops, to deserts, to satellites, far from cities. Far from us, the night sky had to flee, and with it fled the memory of what it meant to feel it not through data, but through presence. Children now grow up without knowing what a truly dark sky looks like, without remembering the thrill of a meteor's sudden trail, the hush that falls when someone says, "Look, there, just above the horizon." We light our homes endlessly, fearing the dark, but we forget that darkness was once a teacher, a protector, a canvas for awe, a time for pause, for repair, for dreaming. The loss is not only visual, it is cultural, spiritual. We no longer speak the language of the stars. We no longer ask the sky what it means to be here, now, beneath it. We ask search engines. We ask calendars. We ask algorithms. But the stars are still there, faint, waiting in quiet corners of the world, where the power lines end and the silence returns. They have not abandoned us. We have simply moved too far and lit too much. And yet this can be remembered, not by turning off everything, but by returning to stillness, by choosing one night to walk, where the lights are fewer, by letting your eyes adjust, letting your breath flow, letting the stars, hidden but loyal, reappear. The astronomers of old needed darkness not only to see, but to understand, to feel, to belong. Without it, their tools were useless. Without it, their knowing was hollow. And maybe now what we miss is not just the sky, but the kind of seeing that only darkness allows, the kind of wisdom that only comes when the world is quiet enough for our stars to be noticed. Not as decoration, but as meaning, as memory, as the gentle reminder that we are small, and that smallness is not a flaw, it is a place. A place we once knew how to live from, a place we can still return to beneath the sky when the lights are low and the silence is finally enough. We are creatures of stories. That is what Yuval Noah Harari reminds us. More than tools, more than fire, more than language itself. What shaped us, what made you as human was the capacity to create meaning, to live not just in what is, but in what could be, what might be, what. Echoes in the dark when the world becomes quiet. And few stories have lasted as long or reached as far as the stories written in the stars. They did not speak, they did not instruct, but they endured. And in that endurance, they offered something that transcends time, orientation. Not only for the body, but for the mind. Not only for travelers, but for the soul. The ancient astronomer was not a scientist. In the modern sense, he was a mediator, a witness, a quiet voice between sky and soil, between question and silence, between not knowing and not needing to know. To gaze at the stars was not to measure distance. It was to remember one's place. To feel deeply, unmistakably that you are part of something vast, not in power, but in presence, not in control, but in belonging. Today we chase so much. We chase speed, we chase clarity, we chase results and efficiency and knowledge that can be packaged and proven and purchased. But in the process, we may have forgotten the other kind of knowing, the kind that does not arrive with thunder, but with a hush. The kind that does not instruct, but invites. The stars, once our calendar, our compass. Our scripture have become backdrop. Something we occasionally notice, but rarely enter. They no longer speak to our decisions. They no longer mark our days. And yet they are still there. Maybe the real loss is not that we stopped observing, but that we stopped wondering, that we stopped allowing the night sky to interrupt our certainty. Harari reminds us that humans evolved to cooperate, to imagine, to believe, not just in gods or constellations, but in rhythm, in stories that gave us continuity when nothing else did. The astronomer of old knew this. He knew that what we see above us shapes what we do within us, that a star can be both a point of light and a point of return. That silence can be both absence and presence. That observation can be both scientific and sacred. And so, as this long, quiet journey comes to rest, you might find yourself breathing slower, thinking softer, feeling, perhaps, for the first time in a while, that it is enough to not understand that you don't need to decode the stars. You only need to remember that they are still shining. Not for answers, not for certainty, but to remind you that even now, beneath all the light and sound and noise of modern life, the old sky is still there, waiting, not to be conquered, but to be joined. And maybe in that joining you recover something gentle, something steady, the shape of your own breath beneath the stars, the sound of your thoughts when they are no longer trying to solve everything, the feeling of belonging to a story that has no end, because it has always been here. Above you, around you, within you,